Hey, so welcome to another episode of the Soulful Side of Life with me, Ally Portee. I hope you're well and having a good week. And today's podcast episode is with Frédéric Jacques, and he is the founder or co-founder of the fragrance brand, the Society of Scent. It is an American brand with a French heart because we have to admit and give it to the French that they are kings and queens of fragrances. It's so embedded having a proper fragrance in the French society. And he brought that over to the United States. He launched in New York, and then he now lives in Dallas, Texas with his family. And the fragrances in the brand, some are very strong and some are very soft and feminine like. And I really enjoyed getting to sample some of the scents that he sent me, just to get an idea of what they're creating. And I must say that my favorite out of all of between these two lines, the Eau Ultra and the Eau Facile, my favorite is the Arable Sucre. It's gentle, it's just oh so nice. But Frédéric and we have a conversation about the marketing aspects of the fragrance industry, what he would change about the vision of the fragrance industry. We talk about his journey from the age of 13, where he knew that he was going to go into fragrances, and he did that. He worked with Hermes, he worked with Armani, Ralph Lauren, Mugler, and many other brands developing their own fragrance lines. And until he reached the point where he's like, you know what, it's time to launch my own thing and do my own thing. And we talk about why that's so rewarding. The brand is family owned, and it's quality craftsmanship in creating fragrances. And he's bringing this to America. And soon the company will be launching candles. So enjoy this podcast episode. I hope that you take away something that will encourage you to go launch your own thing and to do what God has put on your heart to do. So enjoy. Frédéric, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. I'm always happy to talk about, what I do. It's a passion. And it's been for a long time.
I'm sure it's not work for you. It's
funny.
life.
I was thinking about this like 15 minutes ago, and it is not. And I think it's partially become a work for a lot of people, and a bit too much, if you ask me, because I don't mean that the passion has disappeared, but the profession and the professional aspect has taken over, not just the business part, everything. I know perfumers that don't even wear fragrance because I suppose they associate it with work. I wear fragrance all the time. I try to not wear fragrance when I work because, of course, it's a distraction, or it's noise around the other things that you're smelling.
Sure.
But I cannot not wear perfume at all. And I know a lot of perfumers that just don't, because I guess, I don't know, it's what they do. So, I don't want that in my private life. Well, I want that in my private life. And that's why I decided to make it my work, because I didn't find anything that I wanted to do more.
Of course. It's funny you say that, because it's like a chef going home, like a Michelin star chef going home and making a turkey sandwich, or just putting butter on a slice of bread and, I don't know, warming up some soup that's from the
But I guess if they
supermarket.
do, going to be great bread and great, and I understand the return to simplicity.
Yeah.
What I would not understand is if they throw a piece of industrial bread with that would be weird to me. I understand the quest for let's go back to a simple ingredients, because you're still connecting to beauty. I
Yeah.
suppose. I don't know. I cannot speak for those chefs, but I know exactly what you're saying, though. It's funny, right? You're like,
Sure,
well, and
yeah.
that's the guy that I'm, is, cooking for me. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Eating so simply, we think that everybody who works in these glamorous roles are going home and living a glamorous life, but I think a lot of times they're living a simplistic life because,
yeah,
yeah, they're
it's funny you say
tired
that
and
because, the lifestyle and what we project. So, okay, so perfume is, unfortunately intimately related to fashion. I think it's a connection that's uh, relatively recent, and I think it's a connection it's not wrong, but it's insufficient.
yeah,
But regardless, so you have this glamorous aspect about perfume, and and when you see people from the profession, sometimes they live on, I know one who lives on an alpaca farm.
yeah,
Um, but I think because also, I think the link there is authenticity to me, at
mhm,
least. I understand pulling back into a more simple lifestyle that what you project in the glamorous aspect of perfume, but it if it's simple, it has to still connect. To me, at least, it's the connection with nature, maybe with the simplicity of the great pleasures or the great beautiful things that you can find around you without the
mhm,
sophistication of whatever culture, and go back to the roots. To me, in that sense, it makes sense.
sure,
Um, if it's, uh, you know, if it's just for the sake of efficiency, for example, or I wouldn't connect with that.
for
Um,
sure. I'm curious, how would you describe to a 5-year-old what it is that you do? What is a perfumier? How would you break it down in simple terms?
well, at the mechanical level, we blend stuff, which a 5 years old would totally understand because they do that with paint, they do that with mud and water and everything, that's vaguely liquid that they can mix together, right? And they
Yes,
see their mom doing that in the kitchen. So for 5 years old, I think what we do is very similar to cooking because there's various ingredients and we layer them or we mix them, and the end result normally is a transformation where you don't necessarily recognize all the ingredients that you put in, or maybe baking or something. So there's a transformation. Um, the function of it is much more difficult to explain to a 5 years old than the function of food, for example,
sure.
because the function of it is also, I think, food or filling a need, but it's more emotional slash spiritual slash it does something to your consciousness and to your mind and to your mood, and to at any level it's something in the brain which is also invisible. It's funny because the medium is invisible and the effect is invisible.
Sure.
Perfume will never make you fat, right?
Right.
It's I think the amount of molecules, the amount of matter is actually, really small. So it's all in the effect that it creates on your mind at the first step.
Sure.
And of course, there's all the connection with the memory. That I don't know how I would really explain it to a 5 years old, except maybe have him try something and say, what does it make you think of? And, try to read their emotion and then try to explain that, well, you see that emotion, like you were smelling this and you smiled.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I make you smile, or I make you sad, or I retransport your mind, your consciousness is transported either, in time or space or whatever. But there's an effect, there's a transformative effect, which is pretty magical, which is pretty cool, which I think is really the essence of sense.
Mm.
And sense in general, some come from nature, some come from your body, some come from this, some come from, burning wood, whatever. Perfume consists in kind of harnessing
Mm.
the world of scent with the human brain and the human developed know-how, but put some control on things that are in nature to start with.
Sure.
even when we create molecules, at some point, they do come from nature, right? We did transform something into something else, or we did extract something, or we synthesized something not out of thin air.
Sure.
So our playground initially is what's around us in nature. And of course, all the flowers and all the fruits and all the spices and all the things that uh, are loaded with, in organic chemistry with those compounds that smell. And, I suppose, I imagine, I don't know that, but I imagine that they were discovered one by one, like in, ancient times. It's like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, it smells good. And then we kind of mastered the art of stealing
Mm.
that scent from nature, or at least a part of that scent from nature, because, extraction is never complete or never the same. Having our own rendition that we could put in little bottles.
Mm.
And then from there, all possibilities are open, because now you have captured scents that you never created yourself. You wouldn't know how. And now you're playing with it like you're playing with colors.
Mm.
Actually, it's exactly the same. Like we found pigments in nature and then we invented some new, but we work from pigments, we make paint, and then we paint, and then we create something else, which is the second really cool aspect of this, because there's a lot of beauty in those smells coming from nature. But there's a lot of beauty that we're able also to create by transformation of those, initial beauty. And I like this double prong, double effect. You know, you steal from nature. It's pretty cool what you have in your little bottles, and then you retransform it very often in something more abstract.
Sure.
Yes, you can try to do a figurative smell of the rose, but then just get the rose. Like
Yeah.
perfumery is very often trying to create something else. And then comes the motivation. Why are you trying to create something, and to do what, and for what purpose? What's the incentive? Personally, I feel the incentive in the times we're living in are a bit too much solely guided by, uh, you know, the market
Mm.
and the money.
Mm.
Not that there's anything wrong with selling something, but when it's the only incentive and the only motivation, it creates things that we shouldn't be surprised about. Like, we shouldn't be surprised. We should analyze the models, read the incentive, and understand why. When people say, well, a lot of things smell the same. Well, yes, it's not a mistake.
Sure.
And then there's all those copies that are able to sell dupes for a quarter of the price. Well, if someone is able to make money and make a profit on the same thing,
Mm.
it's really the same thing, or if it's close, and sell it for a tenth of the price, well, probably the original is not so fantastic as it should be.
Mm.
Maybe,
Mm.
I don't know, but
I
I
think
think that,
that's true because when I've gone to, cheaper stores and I feel like if I smell one of their fragrances on the counter, I'm like, I've smelled this before, or
yeah.
it's so easy for them to recreate. But if you go into a high level, bespoke, uh, almost like couture,
Hmm.
fragrance house, those fragrances, especially like Middle East scents, they're
Hmm.
very hard, I feel, to just easily recreate.
And it's not so much because of, the recipe itself. It's because, I mean, might be sometimes, but, we have mechanical, I mean, technologies that could very easily give you all the molecules that are in there, and kind of
Mm.
their proportions. But even if you know what you should put in it, or more or less, the problem is, it's a budget.
Sure.
If a fragrance house is using like super expensive materials, even if you don't put a lot of it, at some point, whoever's trying to copy them in their budget range is not going to be able to put what's there.
Sure.
It's like, when you try to sell crab meat for, 20 cents a pound, well,
Hmm.
it's not going to be real crab meat. You're going to invent something, and you can call it crab meat if you want, but it's a dupe of the real thing. And because the real thing is rare,
Yeah.
you cannot do it at the price that you're, trying to do it. Like, so there's a lot of factors that go into what the market is, is those days. Another thing that's interesting, everyone talks about niche perfume, which is not really new. Like, we're now going on 30 years of niche perfumery, but it's become so non-niche and so mainstream that now it's like it's a term that every household understand what niche perfume is. Or
Mm.
niche perfume didn't exist before, like
Mm.
before, and the question is why. And if you reverse the question, is really why was the niche perfume market, you know, created out of nothing? Well,
Mm.
because the mainstream market maybe didn't do their job properly. And so someone felt a need to, create an alternative. It's like in
Sure.
media. I'm not going to tell that to you. If the mainstream something does their job, knowing that they own it, right? They
Of
have the
course.
infrastructure, they have the know-how, they have everything. There's zero reason for anyone to be able to break that.
Yeah.
If anything, the system is actually protecting itself.
Mm.
I'm not saying that random individual cannot, at the margin, do their own things, but it's not going to become like almost bigger than the mainstream perfumery market.
Of
And it
course.
happened because there was a deficit of something, and that deficit of something corresponds to when it became a big, 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 big business, and the
Mm.
incentives were not creative, and it was easier to duplicate the success of someone else or to get closely inspired. It was also very tempting to, shave the cost of good here and there because marketing is expensive. So it doesn't mean that all those brands are making billions. They just have reallocated the
Mm.
dollar from maybe the product to the marketing, the storytelling, the advertising, all those
Sure.
things. And the problem is there's nothing wrong with this in the absolute. It's their choice. But I think the consumer at the end of the chain, first, the consumer didn't make that decision.
Yeah.
The consumer
The
didn't say, oh,
company
yeah, you're
did.
right. We should really put all the money in marketing and advertising because, I don't need all this money in the bottle. I don't need
Sure.
those expensive ingredients. Um, and also, the consumer is kind of systematically being told another story because the assumption is that the consumer doesn't know.
Mm.
And also, it's invisible. It's not really it's not really objective. What is
Yeah.
the qualification of a perfume? It's not objective. So, we can do whatever we want because they'll never know.
Sure.
It turns out that intuition is a thing and taste, and it circulates from word of mouth. And little by little, I think this model is facing difficulties because
Mm.
people feel that something
Mm.
is wrong. They don't
Mhm.
know, they don't necessarily know why. They don't care why. They feel something is wrong, and if there's an alternative, they'll be looking for it. And it
Sure.
becomes a game of how do you how do you become visible in a sea, an ocean of perfume of all sorts and all categories. And
Yeah, it's quite a saturated sea. But I'm curious, what was it that led 13-year-old Frederic to knowing that you wanted to be a perfumer?
well, it's very simple. So my mother was wearing perfume. I'm French, so it's in the culture everywhere. I was living in Paris, so it's maybe even more in the culture everywhere. So it was there as an environment. My brother, actually, I remember at this because it's part of the story because, he was wearing this aftershave from, I don't know, like some brand. Uh,
Sure.
and for whatever reason, when his birthday came, and he's older than I am. So, I was 13. He must have been like 20 or something like this in his 20s. And I was like, oh, I don't know how the idea came, but I was like, oh, I know he likes perfume, right? I know his aftershave. I liked it. I was like, oh, every time he was wearing it, so it already it did something to me. And then I was like, oh, I should buy him like a real perfume. Like I knew what a real perfume was because my mother was wearing them, and I knew his aftershave was not, very sophisticated or pricey or whatever. I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy him like a real perfume. And so 13-year-old me went to a perfume store in Paris with the expectation that, I would ask and the woman would tell me, well, this is good. Okay. And to me, it would be like a 5 minutes deal, right?
Sure.
Except I entered, I did exactly this, like, oh, it's the birthday of my big brother, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, yeah. So she gave me one thing, we smelled. And I was like, wow, I was fascinated. And then I was like, oh, what about this one? What about that one? And I'm not kidding, I spent the entire day in the perfume
Wow.
store. She
Wow.
probably had like a couple of clients during the day. I know it was a Wednesday because I didn't have school on Wednesday afternoons. And so I stayed the entire day. I didn't buy anything. Also, back then, any good perfume store attendant will tell you, oh, don't buy now, like try it.
Sure.
So I was also, incentivized to understand that there was no rush to buy. I came back home with all those things everywhere. I was fascinated, and both by, I think, the scent or the smell, or the perfumes, but the bottle, it was very luxurious. It was great. I was like, wow, I never had an experience like this. I went to this store every other Wednesdays afternoon for like,
Mhm.
I think, a year, smelling and collecting everything and putting it on little pieces of paper. Eventually, I did buy something for my brother. I did. I don't
Mhm.
remember what it is.
Okay.
Um, and it was Balafre by Lancôme, which of course doesn't exist anymore because that's another problem in the industry. Like the minute it doesn't make million, it disappears from the shelf or it's changed or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that continued to grow with me up to when I was 18, 19, where I could smell anything in the street and tell you exactly what it was. For two
Mm.
reasons. I was spending a lot of time memorizing all of this, but also the market was much more simple. Like, there were probably, I don't know, maybe 100 things that I had to have in my mind, and they were all very distinct from each
Mhm.
other. So it was not, I don't think it was hard. I have a hard time now telling you whatever is because I really don't know. There's too
Sure.
many, they're not too much, they're too much alike, etc. And so when I was 18, I was like, okay, so I started to study law.
Mm.
Uh, my mother had studied law. My father was an engineer. I was clearly not an engineer, so I studied law. And then it was scratching my mind and my heart, like this thing with fragrance. And that's all I was thinking about. Up
Mm.
to one day where I had a sparkle in my brain. I was like, well, there must be a profession somewhere. I never thought about it before. Like, I finally realized that these things were not just there. Someone was making them.
Sure.
And then I went on a quest for, okay, I need to understand where, what. And of course, you go talk to people and they think, you should be a chemist, or which is not true. And long story short, I was fortunate enough to enter the Roux. Now it's Givaudan, and I don't know if it rings any bell to you. It's a big corporate. It's the number one corporation of perfume creation. It's a big lab,
Mhm.
but they have this little jewel of a perfumery school, which is worldwide famous and was and still is, where they train perfumers.
Mm.
And I got fortunate enough to be accepted in that school and run the full program of 3 years of training, and then working at Givaudan, and then the rest is history because I was in that little uh, profession, which was smaller then. It kind of has exploded. Um, I remember, back then we're talking about 87, something like this, at Roux, which has become
Mhm.
Givaudan, the fine fragrance entity in Paris that was really like making most of what was on the market. So
Mhm.
they clearly had a leadership position in the fine fragrance market, at least in Europe. And I think there were like 4 perfumers, 3 salespeople, maybe 4 evaluators, and they were owning the market. Like
Wow.
now you're talking about 25 perfumers, and even smaller companies have like 10 perfumers. It's like there's been an explosion at the uh, creation level,
Yeah.
which reflects the number of launches, the number of stuff.
Yes. They're
But
coming
so
out with a lot, like these luxury fashion houses that have beauty lines or fragrance lines. They're launching a lot.
and even niche, and
Yeah.
I discover 5 new niche brands every day.
Yeah. It's
And I
quite
guess,
oversaturated.
yeah, I guess some of them, won't be there in a week. Some of them will, but because I think at the end of the day, everything will be sifted down and eventually you reconnect to common sense. I just think there's really a lot of noise, and
Mm,
I think it's really not helping the consumer.
mm,
Um, and it's slowing down the ability to filter,
hmm.
the wheat from the chaff, I would say. And
I
we're in
thought
that
co
moment.
I thought COVID would fix a lot of that in fashion and beauty, but things have gone back to just mass producing of collections, and it doesn't give the consumer enough time to realize what's out there,
Yeah.
which may contribute to, I don't know about where the fragrance market is, but luxury fashion right now is struggling. I don't know about luxury fragrance,
I
but
think it's not doing great either,
yeah.
for the same reasons. We have espoused uh, the methods of fashion because we're
Mm,
we're joined at the hip
mhm.
since the 40s, or 40s, 50s. Fashion designer perfume started before, of course. Like, I think Chanel 5 is from
Yeah.
1921 or something like this. It's
Yeah.
probably one of the first ones, but as a model, as a market, I think it really exploded in the 50s.
Mm,
Um, and so it has become a prevalent model, and slowly but surely, the ways of fashion have, integrated our ways, including on the egomania of certain participants, the fast fashion aspect,
of
all
course.
of it.
Of
Um,
course.
it's not really, there's no reason for perfume to be so closely associated with fashion. When you think
Mm,
about it, it wasn't before. It's just because a lot of fashion brands have their perfume. Same thing with gendering perfume.
mm,
It's really related from that same era where perfume became fashion designer perfume, and it's normal for them.
mm.
If you got into the Dior store on Avenue Montaigne, you had one aisle for women and one to this day. You have, it's at the corner, and uh, if you're going to make a perfume, well, where are you going to put it? And
Yeah.
so instinctively, they made one for women and one for men, or it's a bit more nuanced and refined than this. But uh, and I think that's why, more and more niche collections are non-gendered, but not in an active or activist way, like, oh, we're for everybody. It's just like a no subject, because
Mhm.
we were talking about food. Is there food for men and food for women? Is there art for men and art for women?
No.
No, there's fashion for men and fashion for women because of, I suppose, some biological differences. Um, but perfume shouldn't be obeying those, this distinction, and it won't. It's already
Mhm.
kind of done. It's still
Yeah, I
there.
guess there's more fluidity with
Yeah.
fragrances, but I can't imagine as a female wearing a Polo Ralph Lauren uh
No, because those codes are
fr
are here now.
mhm.
So
Mm.
it's, there are things that you can't erase just in a generation.
True.
In the absolute, why not? Like, men were wearing violet in
Mm.
the, I
Mm.
think 19th century, or look even at fashion.
Mhm.
Look at the fashion apparel of, like, say, the 18th century, right?
Mhm.
They have like pink and light blue, you know, suits. Men were wearing heels with
Mhm.
buckle and kind of pantyhoses, or
Mhm.
not pantyhoses, but
I know what you mean.
So, it is even
Yeah.
that fluid, I guess. But
Those
Um,
codes definitely change over
yeah,
time. But like if
but
you
they
take
affect
oud,
sometimes. You know, I agree. I wouldn't think a woman wearing polo would be like very feminine.
I
But you
equate
never
it to
know. You never know.
masculinity.
You
Yeah,
never know. I mean, it's yes. There's heritage codes or heritated codes that are still in our brain because you know
sure.
we don't forget very easily that.
But I think something like oud in the Middle East, where Arabs tend to wear oud, I think a Westerner would equate that for a male scent, a
Maybe.
cologne. Whereas I don't think a woman in the West would think, oh, as for perfume. But when you go to the Middle East, men and women are wearing both
Yeah.
oud. So,
Yeah. Oud is funny. It's a funny thing, you know, because it's like we discovered it yesterday. Like it's a new thing. It's really not
yeah.
a new thing at all. It's just it's been pushed, I think, again by the marketing of it. I believe most people, if they were smelling real oud, would be
Mm,
completely turned off.
mm,
It doesn't mean that you cannot do a great fragrance with oud that would be liked by Westerners, but it's one of those cases where their taste is almost being educated.
mm.
Also, like most oud fragrances do not contain a drop of oud, and so they're made in
Wow.
a cleaner. But it's definitely a trend.
Sure.
Um, it's gonna stay a trend. Um, it's you know, there's to me a material is a material. There's
Mm,
no material that is interesting or uninteresting. It's all what you make of it. It's pretty
sure.
much like again when you cook. Like you know, if you ask me if I love celery, well, I don't. But I know plenty of recipe where if you don't put it, you're really missing on the final balance of everything.
Sure. That's an interesting point. So you worked for Hermes, Armani, Ralph Lauren, Mugler,
Well,
and others
I work for
developing
Givaudan and all
fragrances.
those. Yeah, so
Okay.
when in the course of my career, I was part of the creation process for specific projects at Hermes or yeah, all those brands and more and more.
What
I've
did
been
you
exposed to.
learn?
What did I
What did you
learn
learn?
from them?
Yes.
I learned that Hermes is a great house, and I learned that I think it's because it's family owned and so independent. And
Mm,
so they were, I don't know now, I haven't worked with them for like 15 years now, but uh, I've learned that they cared about the product. Um, I have learned with Armani and some other brands of big groups that they don't care about the product,
mm,
that they believe a product that tests well can go in any brand and reflect any storytelling. And I'm not saying they're wrong, by the way. I'm not judging this. It's been working for them. It's just a
sure.
different perfumery than the one I believe in.
Mm,
Um, I've learned that it's going faster and faster, and I've learned that as a perfume guy, you don't even have time anymore to assess the quality of what you're presenting to them.
yeah.
So I've learned that it's a bit crazy. What else did I learn? Yeah, I learned that when you work with those brands, you do understand the result.
Mm,
You know, there's a reason why Hermes continues to do great perfumes. There's a reason why some other brands are just, you know, they're doing like a more mass consumption or mass appeal product. They want to continue to call it luxury, but it's not, you know. And I've
mm,
learned that Hermes is one of the last traditional French luxury house out there. And that is also a challenge for them because, you know, I'm sure it's a struggle for them to remain independent. I'm sure it's also a constant restraint to not, you know, open the gates and just make more money quickly and
sure.
manage the loss of brand equity later.
But
Because
I
that's
think
really
this is
what
their success because in fashion they're doing extremely well in a time where luxury fashion is struggling. Hermes is on top, and probably these factors that you point out, family owned, and they're focused on quality craftsmanship, is is a contributing factor to their success,
And
I would
also where
imagine.
you gear the creative direction. I really believe creative direction is one of the most important thing in any domain because it
Yeah.
carries the vision. It's not just the technical aspect. It's not just the perfumer. It can be the perfumer. It can be one person, but it's different roles. There's the more technical role and there's the vision. Where are you going to take it? And I think in fashion, it's exactly the same. And it doesn't mean that some creative director are bad or some others are better. It's also where they're looking at when as a creative director of fashion, say your objective is to create an effect or be noticed or make something a little shocking or well, that's an objective. I don't think
Yeah.
Hermes is trying to make anything shocking or they're,
Oh
they're,
no.
they're trying to stand the test of time and continue on their values of good products with a creative edge. You're not trying to be classic for the sake of redoing what you've done before, but you
True.
can have a classical way of thinking in the sense of making something that's well done,
Mm-hmm.
that's pleasant, that's attractive, that
Mm-hmm.
will last, because that is what justifies the price.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
I
Makes
think to
sense.
me and to a lot of consumers, I think, and that's why people who don't do that are facing difficulty maybe now or will, because
Yeah.
at some point when the consumer is disconnected from those things and they still have to pay premium dollars, they're like, wait a minute, isn't that a bit expensive for what it
Mm-hmm.
really is if it's just a fad or just a hype? And
Mm-hmm. Or if it's made in China, why should I spend Chanel prices if it's made in China? Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, we've been kind of talking about this. The perfume market is oversaturated, and most every luxury fashion house has a fragrance line. Plus, there are privately owned and family-run brands like yours. Why launch your own brand and not spend your career working for the brands that you've worked with? Why did you decide to launch?
Well, I'm not a born entrepreneur. It's not
Mm,
why. It's not like, all my life I wanted to have my own company. I realized that later. I do see the benefit of this and I value it and I cherish it and I like it. It's really essentially because of everything we discussed. It's a miss. It was to me after at some point it went in phases. Okay, well, first I was excited to work for those companies. It's like, oh wow, I can't believe this. Then you grow kind of frustrated or doubtful that what you're doing is really the best you can do. And it's true on your own participation as much as what you see on the market, even what you didn't participate in. You're like, you have this same sentiment that we were talking about from the consumer that's disturbed. Well, say you're disturbed, but you know why, because
mm,
you're in the factory where the sausage is made, and it's really made like a sausage, by the way. And so you're like,
mm,
okay. And then the next phase to me was like, okay, I need to change this from the inside, right? So make even more a conscious effort to resist where it's going and, manage things and people to pull back and, soon enough, or maybe not soon enough in my case, but you realize that the system is much stronger than your little effort, even if it's, well intended and well conceptualized, and you're not going to change it from the inside. And so, well, you have to change it from the outside.
mm,
In the meantime, I had formulated a couple of scenarios, a couple of theories of what was wrong and how it could be done better and blah, blah, blah. And at some point, there's also like a personal, almost ethical thing, which you're like, well, if you got all these ideas, dude,
mm,
you're going to have to go and do it because otherwise you're just complaining. And by the way, you're still in the system. So you're criticizing it, but you're also part of it.
mm.
And because you're not strong enough to change anything, well, really, you're just as dirty as the system is. And so little by little, it puts pressure on you, and you're like, okay, I need to do it. And the ideas had matured on how it could be done. And at some point, you're facing yourself. You're like, okay, you know how you want to do it. Now you're gonna have to jump. And of course, there's a moment where you're in the middle of, it's like walking. There's a moment.
Sure.
It's a succession of unbalance. Well, when you quit a corporate job and to start your own thing, there's a big moment of doubt and imbalance. But you do it,
The
and then
unknown.
you figure out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you also are very aware that you'll make less, and that's okay. So you also adapt your life to you know face this new reality. And then don't forget to contemplate all the things you gain, because you lose some, but what is it you gain? Well, you gain your freedom, you gain your creative freedom, you gain your economic freedom, you gain your not having to respond to idiots if you don't like them. You just,
Mm.
you don't have to.
Sure.
Uh, you gain a sense of self, I don't know, accomplishing, and I think that's what work is at the end of the day. It's a fulfillment of your abilities. And so you can have this in a corporate environment, or you can have it on your own, but it's still something that makes you go to work every day. And so to me, it's easier to have it on my own than
Mm.
current corporate environment. If the industry was what it was maybe 50 years ago, I don't think necessarily I would have jumped ship and do it on my own.
What was it like 50 years ago?
Well, it was not as corporate, not as big. There were
Mm.
smaller companies, and the place of the product was prevalent. And we're talking about, if you think about it, 50 years ago, or between 50 and I don't know if it's 50 or 70, but it's the era that actually produced all the best fragrances you can name.
Mhm.
From opium to this to that. Like there's a plethora of the classics, from
Sure.
Shaniba, whatever. So um, so the real question would be more, when did it really change?
Mm.
And it didn't change overnight, but
Mhm.
it changed. I think in the 90s it started to change. You know, So Jean Amic, who was the head of and the owner of Rour back then, and a figure in our industry, he's the one who recruited me. And he tried to. I remember the day when I met him, I was like, perfumery is really not what you think anymore. It's changing. He even used some vulgar terms to describe where it was going. And I was 18 or 19, or I said, I don't care. It's what I want to do. But I
Yeah.
perfectly understand what he meant. And so now we're talking about, again, it's 87, and you already saw that. Edmond Rudnitska wrote a book about it in the
Yeah.
50s and 60s, which he was also seeing where it was going. It
Wow.
was just farther away. Well, in the 90s and 2000, it really started, I think, to really change. It had
Mhm.
become like a huge business. It was reflected by the tonnage of oil that we were selling. Uh,
Mm.
I don't have like a precise date, but I would
Mhm.
I would say I would have loved to make the bulk of my career before the end of the 80s, probably.
Okay.
Any
Okay.
time before that doesn't matter.
It's certainly
And
more commercialized, I would say, the fragrance market than
it's a
what it was before.
commodity.
Yeah. And if it's a fragrance that's a part of a fashion house, they have to create so many fragrances because it's the most affordable thing that maybe somebody can buy from a Dior or what have
Yeah,
you.
I guess. Yeah. Well, it started like this.
Mm.
Um, it's the reason why they started to do it, actually. It's also
Mm.
the reason why it's interesting what you say, because the reason why the fashion designer business model has exploded in the again, I think in the 50s, is really because of the explosion of advertising.
Mm. Mm.
So you're exactly right. Let's say you're Dior, okay? In the 30s, 40s, in the 40s, the audience is probably not Dior because he was created later, but of say Robert Piguet or someone like this. The awareness, the people who know the brand and the people who wear the brand are kind of the same. Okay.
Mhm.
There's a few people that know about it and cannot afford it, but it's kind of overlaps a lot. After the explosion of advertising, it's a completely different story. And that's Christian Dior in the 60s. Like everyone knows about Christian Dior, and you have also Sauvage and all the other perfumes. Very few people can wear a Christian Dior gown.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but it so happened that this transformation of designers starting to do perfume was just before the explosion of advertising. And they didn't do that on purpose. But it so happened that they did this, they started to do perfumes, and then advertising allowed them to push this product you were talking about, which is the accessible product, to buy a piece of the Dior dream or Chanel or whoever. Of course,
Mhm.
Chanel had started this before, but and it transformed the whole industry because it became an industry of fashion designer perfume. And then you
Mm.
had another, which was the celebrity perfume, and now the latest fad is perfume reviewer perfume.
Yes. Yeah. So much has changed. I'm curious, what is your process like when creating a scent?
A lot. Well, first of all, we don't have any time constraint, so sometimes we're fast, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we forget something and we come back to it later. So it's a mix of. It's very often it's an ingredient story. It's not necessarily one ingredient. It's like, how could we make a rose that would not be naive and not feminine and not this and not that. And so we're at the ingredient blend level. Uh, and then we try to find a way to express that story that inspired us in a little more romantic way. It's always multisensory.
Mhm.
Not necessarily because we are multisensory, but because we do understand that explaining a fragrance to someone before they can experience it, and it's
Mhm.
not just because you're online or not, it's because you're gonna see, you're gonna get in touch with the name, the colors, the bottle before you get in touch with the notes, right? And even getting in touch with the notes is gonna be a very long journey because it's not putting it on a paper and smelling it for a minute.
Mm.
It's a journey.
Sure.
So there are things that precede this journey, and it makes sense to us to kind of funnel your mind into where we're trying to land the scent itself to give you more opportunity of navigating that story.
Mm.
So for us, the name, the story, the color, the collages that we put, they're a conduit so that you wouldn't be completely surprised by what it smells. So we're trying to build a little environment for you so
Mhm.
you're more comfortable instead of like discovering the fragrance, which you will always at the end be like, oh wow. But you kind of have an idea where we're going with this. And it just creates a smoother landing strip for the consumer because we acknowledge and we know that perfume is intimidating. For
Mhm.
non-experts, perfume is intimidating. It's confusing.
Mhm.
Sometimes people tell me, "Wow, I really like this perfume, but is it good?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"If you like it, it's good." But people are like very. They feel that they can't really talk about it because they don't know about it.
Mm.
Well, depends
Sure.
what you say about it, but so we're trying to facilitate this. So it's a big part of the creation process.
Mhm.
Putting all those senses together. Um,
I really enjoyed your the line "eu facile"
so eau
when you
facile
sent.
is yeah, eau facile is meant for people who don't want like a deep, heavy,
Yeah, it's soft.
abstract fragrance, like what we call perfume, like, perfume maybe à la française, like
Mm.
it's more a reflection, a bit like, it's actually very French too, in a way, because we have this thing in France called eau de Cologne, which is this fresh splash that Napoleon was working. It's very refreshing. It's very botanical. And so eau facile is kind of a take on this easy to wear, fresh uh, thing, except it doesn't have to be citrus.
Mm.
And so we're exploring different type of blend.
I
Chocolate actually doesn't sound fresh on the face of it.
the is it Érable Sucre?
Yeah, érable,
This one really caught my attention. I felt like I was walking into Hotel Cos in Paris.
because it's
Uh,
like it's smoky and
yes, that one's nice. I like the rose and the lavender as well. Um, and then from the Oud Ultra, I really enjoyed the cocktail orange. That
mhm,
one's really nice. And the silver lightning
it's very
or lighting.
fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're
I guess
very
you don't like the heavier stuff.
exactly. I don't like, and that's why probably I'm not a huge Chanel
Mhm,
fragrance lover because I find those fragrances too heavy. But I do love the lighter notes, particularly floral note scents.
mhm.
I tend to gravitate towards.
Well, I'm glad you like something, like we try to so again, the motivation is beauty
Yes.
first. Uh, Not beauty as in the beauty business, but beauty as in everything that's beautiful. And right or wrong, I believe there is kind of an objective beauty. I'm
Yeah.
not saying, of course, a big part of this is subjective, but who's gonna smell a jasmine and say, "Oh no, it stinks." It's yeah, maybe like it, but there's beauty in it. Okay, there's beauty in nature, uh, and we're just trying to extend this.
Yeah.
And so we're motivated by creating more beauty with beauty.
Mm.
Um, it's what we like to do, and so everything we do is very well balanced.
Mm.
You'll never smell something that's like in your face, or
Mm.
it's not our style.
Yeah.
It's very balanced, it's very moderate, and we also like challenges. So if you're gonna do something that has a call out that says maple,
Mm.
which for most people is gonna be sticky, too much like food, and then the
Mhm.
second call out sugar, well now you're really crazy. Like you're gonna have you know, this glue all over your body.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge for us. And how do we make this fresh, delicate, elegant,
Mhm.
not sticky, not cloying, not fatiguing? We love those tension.
Mhm. Amidst all the perfumes you've created, which one's most stands out for you or most fulfilling or
That I like the most, probably Ashen Horse.
okay.
But it's
Why
me
is
because
that?
I love Oris. I love the comfort that it provides. I love it's really enveloping. It's very comforting. It's a material that I like a lot. It's a material that's difficult to work with.
Mm,
It's a material that most consumers don't really understand because they've never really smelled it as such.
true.
It's kind of heavy, so it takes a lot of arrangements to make it bloom in an interesting way. But it's just personal.
Yeah. As a creator, how do you balance vision with execution?
I think it's half and half. I think it's a very important question. I think you cannot pass on any of them. Execution, which means skills, which means mastery in our line of work, which means a total control of what raw materials smell, how they behave together. It's like the notes in music. Okay, if
Mm,
you don't have this, which is it's my grief against a lot of the niche fragrances or self improvised perfumers, nothing against them. It's a free country. But if you don't have the mastery, the result is going to reflect this. It's
Sure.
not because it's not because you cook that you can open a restaurant, I
Mm.
believe. Okay.
Mm.
Now, if you want to do it, you should absolutely try. I believe that too.
Sure.
For completely different reasons. But I believe the result will be very different. And
Mm.
so that's about the execution. Now, we have proof in the market that the vision is equally important because everything we're criticizing about the current state of the market is 90% executed by experts, pro. I mean,
Mm.
the best perfumers are still in the circuit. The best everything are still in the circuit.
Yeah.
I cannot say, oh, it's because they don't know what they're doing. They
Mm.
have 95% of the mastery of that art and
Sure.
that discipline. They own this discipline. Yet they're producing stuff that we're like, it's not really good, it's not really different, it's not really qualitative. And so that's the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe actually there's a bigger failure in the markets today of the vision, which is what I call the creative direction,
Mm.
than a deficit of skills. The skills are still there, you know.
Sure.
Uh, so again, to sum up, I think they're equally important. But I think right now, in that very moment of the perfume industry,
Mm.
there's a huge deficit of vision, or there's a huge deficit of putting the vision towards the right objective, as we discussed earlier. I mean, yes, there's a vision. There's a
Mm-hmm.
vision, clear vision. It's make money at all costs. Well, I think it's a vision that serves maybe the short-term interest of the market, but it doesn't serve the product, and it certainly doesn't serve the consumer.
Sure. So, and what should the vision be then?
Create something new, different, that will
Mm.
deliver pleasure and emotion to a consumer, and then they'll like it. And if you do a really good job, well, then you'll make money.
Yeah. I think
You know,
that creators would say, whether this you're talking about fashion or fragrance world, that they don't have time to create something that's well thought out because things are constantly moving and the mindset is I've got to make money, and there's that pressure which
yep,
creators just don't have time to create something like a vision like
I
that.
agree. That's why I
And
had
that's
to review the
unfortunate.
system. I agree. I agree. It's again, it's always a game of incentives. The incentives
Mhm.
are not geared towards making interesting products. They just
Yeah,
are. I mean,
it's
they
about making money.
yeah, and quickly,
Sure.
and in a mass appeal kind of business model. Not
Yeah.
making money, but like, one consumer at a time, and like, and it's the other thing that really bugs me is that we still call that the luxury market,
Mm.
but there's nothing luxurious in it.
No.
Nothing.
Really,
Absolutely.
what's luxurious are the bespoke brands that
Some of
are,
them.
yeah.
And
At
then
the
what's really sad is that those brands, they're most of them have been acquired. Like Frédéric Malle has been acquired by Estée Lauder a long time ago
yeah.
already. What do you think is going to happen? I don't think it's
Mm.
good for the brand. It's probably good for the business, maybe. I don't know, but it's not good for the brand. It's not good for the consumer. I don't think anyone thinks, oh, the products are going to get even better because of that.
Mhm.
And
Um,
it's
in in
sorry.
the 20s and 30s and 40s, when fragrances were becoming a thing, how many scents were brands putting out a year? Do you have an idea on the top of your head?
I don't,
Is it one or
it's kind
two?
of an estimation. It's probably, someone who really counts will tell me, no, that's not exactly this. But
Sure.
I'm not even sure that brands were putting one new a year. Some of them
Right.
would put something new every 5 years.
Yeah. We need
So
to
I
go back
think
to
it was
that.
irregular, but like, again, you're talking about, I don't know, maybe there were like 50 launches a year. I
Yeah.
think if you count niche, we're probably at 7,000. I mean,
Too much.
everyone making perfume except my aunt.
Yeah. We need to
Well,
get
not. I mean,
back.
again, I'm not here to lecture anyone. I really
Sure.
don't want anyone to think that, oh, this guy, this
Oh, of
arrogant French guy.
course.
It's just
These are
these are facts.
observations. Yeah.
These are facts. And the other thing that's almost a fact, I think, is that consumer see that there's a problem. I cannot prove it, but I believe it's a fact, and I believe it will have to change one day. And I believe at the end of the day, I don't care about all this
Mm.
because I've decided to not really look at the market or look at what's going on. I just want to plow through my own way. And if I find my public, great. And if I don't, I will still be very happy to have done it because
Sure.
it's what I have to do. And
Sure.
I like it better if I find some public. I don't need a lot. I don't want a lot because it would transform us also the same way
Mm.
it has transformed others. Uh, it's complicated to find your public in a saturated ocean of noise because that public
Mhm.
is distracted and doesn't even know where to look. But that's what we're trying to do, and that's it. And now my opinion on what the others are doing has become rhetorical. I have an
Mm.
opinion, but I've decided. So what?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not even right. Maybe they're right and they're making piles of money and it's great and that's the way it should do. And consumers are very happy and it's fine with me. I mean, it doesn't change a bit
Mhm.
what I want to do, why I want to do it, how I want to do it, and the fact that I believe that at the end of the chain, there's someone who will enjoy, 1 hour fragrance and think it's great and want to buy it and buy it again because it, first of all, will keep it on the market. And
Sure.
also they don't get tired of it or they don't want to switch to something else and they're happy with it and,
Mhm.
et voila.
A couple of last questions. What is there a certain story behind Society of Scent being based in the US as opposed to France?
Well, we moved to the US with my family 19 years ago.
Mm.
Um, I guess so it's interesting because 19 years ago, I already had this idea that maybe one day I should do something on my own because I was already in that stage where I was like, I don't love what's going on. And I believe it was a little part of why we moved to the US, which was if we want to start something on our own one day, better in the US than in France because the entrepreneur terrain is more favorable. I think it's more complicated to start a business in France for more like administrative and also it's a market that doesn't have the curiosity of, Americans can be they're enthusiastic
Mhm. Mhm.
and business is business. Business is easy here. It's easy here to start a company. I'm not saying it's easy to make it successful, but it's easy to start. France is a
Mhm.
heavy administrative machine. So it's
Mhm.
it's one reason, but the real reason is that we're here.
Mhm.
When we started this, we were in the US for already like, I don't know, 15 years or less than this, but like some time. And so we live here now. We're Americans. We're not going anywhere. And so it was just natural that we would start it. And we started it in New York because that's where we were. And
Mhm.
now in Dallas because that's where we are. And
Yeah.
it's kind of following us. But
Better
I find it
taxes
interesting.
in Texas.
Yeah. And I find it interesting that, we're French, of course, but we're also American. I mean, I'm talking about culturally. We're this hybrid because we really embrace the culture here. And
Yeah.
we're kind of I don't know if we're an American company
Mhm.
based here. We produce here, but we are a French spirit, of course,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to perfume. And my education is the classical French perfumery. Um,
Mhm.
so of course it's what we do, and so we're making French perfume style in the US, I guess, which I think is interesting. I think it's cool. Why not?
Do you think that Texans are taking to a French spirited perfume brand,
I don't know
fragrance
about
brand?
Texans in general. I just know
Mm.
that I discovered Dallas in particular, or the Dallas Metroplex, to be much more sophisticated than I expected. I
Mm.
smell almost more perfume here than I do smell in New York, which I find New York has kind of like retracted themselves. Like, there's a lot now of I don't want to offend anyone, so I don't want to wear a loud perfume. And also, oh, maybe perfume is really bad for my health. There's a lot of this.
Sure.
Uh, Dallas, in comparison, yeah, people really, it's same with fashion. Like people dress a lot here. It's actually,
Mm-hmm. I
and
guess like
so,
that Highland Park area,
well, but
the
I think it extends over the whole
city.
area of Dallas, actually. Yes,
Okay.
probably more in Island Park than in some other areas, but it's not just there. I think there's a sense
Mm.
of like maybe it's more traditional
Mm.
in a way, and
Sure.
so they kind of dress. It's less grungy, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Do you find
Uh,
African Americans taking to the brand as well?
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
yes. Yes, I think. Look, I think perfume is not in the American culture
Mm.
initially. Okay,
Mm.
uh, I think it's very difficult. There's no history of this. And of course, there's a market, so it is getting into the culture. But I think African Americans and other ethnicity embrace it more culturally because they've always had.
Sure.
It's about whether you understand it intrinsically,
Mm-hmm.
inherently, or whether you understand it because it's acquired. And I think for a lot of American people, it's recent. It's like, oh, perfume, like, and yes, they like it. It's cool. Uh, but African American are very much into it. And I like
Sure.
that. They're enthusiastic and they're curious.
Yeah. Growing up, my father wouldn't leave the house without spraying on his cologne. My mother's mother had one scent. That's all she wore. But she wouldn't leave the house without
I'm
putting
not
it on.
surprised.
Yeah.
You're
So
closer
it's
to the
something
French
in our
people.
culture.
Yeah, it is. Like,
Yeah.
like for us in France. And and it's, yes, I think and I like it because the language is immediately very different.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
it's lived from the inside. You can tell.
Yeah, I
There's a
agree.
reaction.
Last question. What will the Society of Scent be up to this year? Are there any launches coming up?
So we really just launched. So, but yes. So actually, we have like a lot of references that are ready, both in O Ultra and O Facile. We're probably not going to launch them this year or next
Mm,
year because there's enough with what we have right now. But we're working on candles,
okay,
definitely.
nice.
It's probably going to be the next step. Um, yeah, we're working on a nicer sample set, but it's not a revolution. It's just an evolution of what we have. But so, and we're working on candles. I think from next year, and maybe we'll decide that, we'll add, I don't know exactly when, but maybe we'll add one O Ultra and maybe we'll add one O Facile. But we have plenty that are ready to go. We just don't want to saturate people. Like, we talked for an hour about market saturation. It's true
Mm,
also when you're a brand. And the temptation is big because, for us, we can create anything anytime. So there's always an idea. You were talking about creativity. There's always an idea. There's always something, and we could release like another 20 fragrances a year
hmm.
if we were just listening to, our enthusiasm, I guess. But we're not
Yeah.
going to do that because we do understand that on the other side, we need to give it time and we need to pace ourselves and we need to be reasonable. But the candles are they're much needed in our offer because it's a country that actually understands interior scenting
Hmm.
better than personal scents, I think.
For
Um,
sure. And I think a lot
There's
of
a big
people,
tradition of that.
yeah, and people are into candles.
It's a
So,
cool product. When you
yeah.
back to emotion, it combines so many things. You can have a beautiful vessel, so it's
Mm-hmm.
decorative. There's the light that comes with it, and all
Mm-hmm.
even the ritualistic approach, like lighting a candle, and then
Mm-hmm.
the scent. It's a lot of things when you think about it. It's a lot of things in one little tiny object.
Sure.
I like.
Yeah. I
I didn't grow with that in France. We seldomly had like scented candles.
Ah, I think
Uh,
maybe it's an Arab thing, maybe to burn
Maybe
candles often, but I actually think Americans burn candles maybe more than they have fragrances on their, bedroom table.
I think so
Uh,
too.
yeah. So that could
And
be a really cool product
and
for
we'll
the
make them
American market.
beautiful and really smelling like spectacular. Because again, same in the candle industry, like it's like food. If you use the right ingredients, you're gonna elevate right away what it smells. Like so. If you don't try to cut corners,
Mm-hmm.
why not use real rose in a candle? Nobody
Sure.
will ever do that. But why not?
Yeah.
If it smells good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Cost, it's not important. One of the things we never do is look at what something is going to cost. It's something we do at the end because we have to be
mm,
realistic. And that's why not all our fragrances are the same price because it has to reflect, that ingredient or, like some ingredient costs like tens of thousands of dollars per kilo.
mm,
Some
wow.
ingredients cost $4 per kilo.
Sure. Which is only fair to base the product price
And
on.
again, it's
Yeah.
unusual in the industry. But it's the way it is, and people can understand.
Yeah. Unless they're in in the industry. But Frederic, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this
It was
conversation.
a pleasure for me. It's
Yeah.
a pleasure, and all good question answered. We can do that again anytime.
Yes, I'd love to do it as well.
Thank you very much, Ali.
I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.